Good afternoon and welcome to our weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield News anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us is University of Missouri livestock analyst Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
Short week this week. Let's start first with a little bit of a market recap. What are some things and some highlights from the movement this week?
Yeah, when you look at where markets have been for the week, we can start on the hog side of the equation, down another $1.50 on hogs for the week, the short week that we have. When we look at the pork cutout value, we're actually up 50 cents, a little more than 50 cents for the week. I keep reminding us that's driven very much by what's been happening to belly prices, or at least the pork cutout value has been for much of 2017. We finished here in the last couple of days with bellies up $10 a hundred, after really being from late February to early April down over $66. So pork cutout value has really been following that pork belly market, and as we've seen bellies go up here the last couple of days, maybe we'll continue to get some strength in terms of the pork cutout value. On the cattle side, when we look at feeder steers and heifers, we are up for the short week that we have. We're still looking for some of that data to come in. 2 to 5 higher on feeder steers, feeder calves up 3 to 6. On the pork cutout value, we're $1 higher on the choice beef cutout value for the week. Fed cattle prices also showing strength, although we're still waiting for a lot of movement to occur in terms of fed cattle sales for the week, but it looks like we'll be up about $3, which also on the future side of the ledger this week on the cattle side, fed cattle futures up more than $4 relative to where we started the week. So it's been a good week on the cattle price side.
Easter's this weekend. Will we see that ham? Maybe has that played a little bit of a role in there as well? And will we anticipate that to maybe drop off after this week?
Absolutely. You know, if you look at ham prices, we are up $1 on ham prices relative to a week ago. And you remind me that as we get through Easter, you know, we're going to be back out here talking about entering the summer growing season in full force, and so we are headed to that next part of the seasonal cycle. Give us a chance to get maybe some higher quality beef and pork out on the grill, and hopefully generate some more domestic demand.
Scott, USDA released their WASDE report this week. Any big changes as we take a look at those livestock numbers, and anything we should take note of?
So I think when we look on the livestock side in particular of WASDE, not a lot of change we got out of this report relative to a month ago. I think the one that does stick out to us, though, is beef production. We did see USDA revise upward about 250 million pounds, the amount of beef that will be produced by the U.S. in 2017. And it continues to remind me that's the supply side of the equation that we've been talking about a long time. More domestic supplies on the marketplace. We'll have to continue to watch as USDA continues to go through the year to see if we get more revisions upward in terms of production.
We talk about the domestic side of things with WASDE. USDA released their global livestock update, which only comes out every 6 months. As we take a look at that, let's talk first about the significance of that report and why we are taking note twice a year of what's going on globally.
Yeah, so I will say, you know, I wish USDA would give us a global livestock circular every month. It's when you look at global markets, they matter a lot to many of these U.S. Livestock producers. Yet from a cost standpoint, it's one that we only see USDA update every 6 months. So every April and every October, we do get a World Livestock Circular out. So we really haven't gotten a good glimpse of what's going on in the rest of the world until the one that they've released in April here that does coincide with the WASDE release. There's some very interesting information in terms of what's happening in the rest of the world that I think is important as we go through here the remainder of 2017.
And I'm assuming Asia, specifically maybe China, among others, are going to play a big role in what we're watching and areas we're watching.
Absolutely, both for beef and pork. When you think about what's going on, we can start on the beef side. And, you know, first of all, with a lot of the news this week related to China and beef in the United States, we are seeing USDA now estimate that beef imports into China will go up another 150,000 metric tons, you know, close to 1 million metric tons of beef being imported by China, what has been some phenomenal growth. I sometimes remind us, we talk about how important and how many rows of soybeans we export out of the United States, we could be in a similar situation for beef at some point down the road. And it would be by and large thanks to what's going on in China now. Even beyond that, you can look at a market like Japan, and we see USDA having an upward revision that gives us about a 40 to 60,000 metric ton increase in imports of beef into Japan. So I think that's also helpful for the United States. If you turn to the pork side of the equation, we also say China right away when we talk about pork. And I always remind us that half the world's pork is produced and consumed in China. But when you look at sow inventory numbers in China, USDA said from now 2016 to 2017, we lost 3 million head of sows in China. I always go just half a U.S. sow herd, although productivity being a little different between those two sow herds. That also has gotten USDA to revise downward their estimate of Chinese pork production in 2017. They revised their 2017 estimate down 1 million metric tons. So from 2016 to 2017, they're fairly flat in terms of Chinese pork production. So I think that also might generate some additional demand for pork. Maybe the United States will get some of that, although I think the EU will continue to be a strong competitor in pork markets for us in China, at least here in 2017.
We definitely can call it the road to uncertainty. You'd have to assume, though, there's some pretty good meetings, or meetings went fairly well between President Xi and President Trump last week in Florida. As we look at the commitment, or at least the admitting or agreeing to lift the ban on U.S. beef to China, does that uncertainty give us a little bit of a boost as well?
So absolutely. I mean, so I would say, let's hope we can get that market open when we actually see a container of U.S. beef headed to China. I know that's going to be very supportive to cattle markets. I think when you look at that on again, off again that we've seen as we've had announcements along the way that Chinese market was going to open to U.S. beef, we get that little bit of pop, but it doesn't last very long because still a lot of uncertainty until we actually can move products. So I think we're going to have that uncertainty hang with us here in markets for a while. But again, if we start talking about shipping beef products to China, I know that'll be helpful to U.S. cattle prices.
Let's talk a little bit on the domestic side for demand. Consumer confidence came out in another strong month for domestic demand.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't want to forget that domestic demand has been strong, continues to be strong. I think the combination of both exports and domestic demand has really helped prices in 2017 for livestock producers. We're up 1.1% in April in terms of that overall consumer confidence relative to March. That's still 10% higher than a year ago, by the way. So it tells you just how strong we've been over the last 12 months. That's really been driven in large part by the current economic situation, which I like to see. Current economic situation for April up 1.8% relative to March. Even expectations, although not as much as the current situation, still up 0.5% in April relative to March. So across the board, seeing some good consumer sentiment news, and let's hope that continues as we go through the remainder of this year.
Talk a little bit, pork here domestically, fair to finish returns came out for March. How are those in relation to previous months?
Yeah, so if you look at Iowa State University releasing those March numbers, they show another month of profit of $11.48 a hog. If you look at the first 3 months, all 3 months of 2017 have been profitable. The average over that 3-month period coming in just a little more than $12 a hog. That really follows what was 4 months that we ended 2016 where we were below break even when you looked at the Iowa State returns. I look at those and I go, all driven really by higher hog prices. When you look at the 3 months of profitability we've seen in 2017, the cost side of the equation's frankly been fairly flat. Over the last 6 months, we've been plus or minus 50 cents for the most part of $46 on the cost side of the equation. So costs have not been moving around that much over the last several months.
And as we look at inputs, feed prices have remained relatively reasonable. Is this a good opportunity for producers to manage a little bit of risk?
Yeah, so perhaps it is, Megan. You know, you look at where we're at in terms of the planting season. We've got planting intentions now out and digested for a couple of weeks. I think we're going to turn our attention to what's weather like out there. And I remind us, although we've been at much lower prices than we've seen for a long period of time, and we haven't seen a lot of volatility, I have a hunch if we get out there in June and July and start to have some dryness in major portions of crop areas in this country, we will run those feed costs higher. I think the last thing we want in a market like this is not to have some protection in place on the feed cost side in case we do see even a weather-related run up in prices. Maybe at the end of the day we get decent yields in this country, but even the idea that we're getting dry, I think, will push feed costs higher than where we've been the last 6 months. So it might be a good time for folks to think through those strategies.
Looking ahead to next week, Scott, cattle on feed and livestock slaughter numbers come out. Anything we're watching next week?
I think we continue to look at what's happening on the supply side of those markets, what's production and slaughter look like. We'll get another read of that with livestock slaughter on Thursday. And then again, what kind of cattle on feed placements will we see come Friday in that report, and really starts to set the stage for slaughter ready cattle as we get in late 2017. So interesting information available on the supply side of the market next week.
We'll be back to a regular week next week. Have a happy Easter and have a good weekend. We'll talk to you next Friday.
Happy Easter to you as well, Megan.
To have our livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning, go to brownfieldagnews.com and click subscribe. You can also check out our Market Minutes with John Perkins for open and closed market information daily. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner on Brownfield.